Alleluia, Christ is risen. The Lord is risen indeed. Alleluia. Please be seated. They ran to the tomb, and finding it empty, they ran away from the tomb. But they ran. What are you running away from? And what are you running toward? I believe that the message of this Easter day is indeed that we are people of the empty tomb, and it is that empty tomb that is the good news. May we run toward it. Now let's look at those original runners for a moment. Because I know some stories here, I happen to know that Jack's first marathon was as a passenger. And that's rather fun. And I happen to know that Charlie's first marathon was last year. And I know that there are some runners in the crowd. And I remember Charlie telling me a story of how he used to try to win races because he treated them like a boxing match, that he went for the hills and he wanted to catch people on the hills, and he treated them like an attack. He waited for the hills, and then he would just muscle up the hills and pass people, because as a 180-pound, 6'2" guy, he wasn't going to be the guy who passed them quickly on the straightaways. That was Peter. John. We're all different sorts of runners, and there are different sorts of realities that impel us. What was happening that first day? Well, first I want to talk about Mary Magdalene, the faithful, early rising woman who was doing her duty at dawn. I'm sure many of us can identify with that. Christopher Allen's been up since dawn taking care of another church here in town, the Brick Church over on Park Avenue. It wouldn't run without him. He is Mary Magdalene of that church. He takes care of every detail, and every detail there is taken care of because of him and his team. He comes to the tomb early every Sunday morning. I'm not building him up. I'm saying that is his faithful response to Christ's call. Mary Magdalene came to the tomb that early Easter morning. Why? Because you weren't allowed to come to the tomb on Friday after sunset. The Sabbath had struck. You weren't allowed to work. And so she came at the first opportunity, which was after the Sabbath was over, to complete the burial. She was hoping she would find someone to roll away the stone. And as she approached, she saw the stone had been removed, and she ran toward it. She saw in horror that the tomb was empty, and she ran away from it, realizing he'd been stolen and that he was gone. All thoughts of burying him properly gone. All thoughts of mourning the one she had loved dashed. I was listening to a sermon by the Roman Catholic Bishop of Brisbane the other day, and he was saying that the press would come to him in the cathedral and ask him, why do you think people come to church on Christmas and Easter? Do you think it's because they're having a tough time in their life and they come seeking solace? And he said this, and it stuck with me. He said, I think people, sure, yes, some people do. And people come for the sustaining joy, the sustaining sustenance of their life that church brings them. Yes, it's solace in times of sorrow. It's being lifted up when we're falling. And it's mutual support throughout our lives. It's the tomb. What was it that rolled away that tomb? It wasn't the Roman soldiers. It wasn't Mary Magdalene. It wasn't Peter who ran to the tomb. It wasn't John who ran to the tomb. It was God. And what is that stone? That stone is what weighs heavy on us. The abiding image of today's gospel is that that stone has been rolled away, and that death has been released. And so it is for us. That is the resurrection that is possible through Jesus Christ. That was the resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is the resurrection of Jesus Christ in our lives today. Yes, it is about the immortal soul. It is also about the reality that no matter where we are in our lives today, no matter what we're doing, no matter what we have gone through, no matter what we are going through, the stone can be rolled away in our lives now. John was the first to move toward it. Mary hung back. Peter, though, I've got to say, Peter is my favorite of the apostles, and it's not because we look back to him as the first pope. Incidental. Peter, I like him because he was perhaps frequently wrong, but never in doubt. He always put himself out there. He always came up with the, who am I? You're the Christ. What should we do? Run into the tomb. Peter just went for it. And I've got to love Peter. It takes someone daring to get something done. And Peter dared always. It also takes John, the abiding presence, who loved. And it takes Mary, the dutiful, patient person who wakes up early. And you notice in this gospel lesson for Easter Sunday, who is not present? Jesus. For that, as I mentioned in last week's sermon, pardon me, Paul Harvey, I look up, I assume you're there. You need to come next Sunday for the rest of the story, because we'll be back in this room. And along with everybody but Thomas, we will encounter Jesus. And we will see the marks in his hands and in his feet. And we will encounter him risen and yet changed, the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. But today, we encounter the tomb empty, the stone rolled away, then as it can be now. And now may we, along with those two disciples and Blessed Mary Magdalene, go back to our homes. Because that's what they did. And that's what we're called to do. Why? To engage in the Christian fellowship that people have done once they leave the tomb. And this is the tomb, this altar, this place where we remember the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ in the blessed sacrament of the altar each Sunday, and then take that resurrected, remembered body into our bodies, out into the world. The Lord is risen. He is risen indeed. Alleluia. Happy Easter.